Welcome to Distilling, everyone. I'm Jesse, and this is the channel all about chasing the craft of home distillation and making it a legitimate hobby. My dirty little secret is blueberry liqueur. I have made this stuff 3 times now. It was the first liqueur I think I ever made, and I goofed off just to try it, you know, without the cameras rolling, to see what it would be like. I loved it, and unfortunately, I've never recorded it until now. So I guess future Jesse has just teased everyone with what this stuff ends up looking like. Let's get stuck into actually making it. And the first thing you're going to need is alcohol. Yes, that is in a jar, not a bottle, and that is because I made it myself. This is essentially just vodka at 93% alcohol. If you want to use store-bought vodka, that is perfectly fine. I am going to be using this at a relatively high ABV, so if you can find something higher than 40%, you know, even like a good Everclear or something like that at, you know, 90%, but you can use whatever, you know, clear spirit you want, to be fair. So that to the side for now. And obviously we're going to need blueberries as well. These are frozen blueberries. You could use frozen blueberries, and to be honest, a lot of people say these are actually better than the fresh thing because the freezing process almost kind of shreds the berries up and allows them to be more accessible to the spirit. But I don't know, I've just kind of got something against using frozen berries, and I want to use fresh berries. Luckily for us, we have a sweet pick your own place really close to where I live right now. Let's go get some berries. I'm amazed to say that even with the kids eating so many berries, I managed to get a kilo of fresh, delicious blueberries. So good. So that is 1 kilo or 2.2 pounds. We're going to be using that obviously to turn into the liqueur, but we also have some honey. I'm going to talk about why we use that later on. Let's get stuck right in. And the first thing we want to do is kind of muddle these berries a little bit, smash them up just a little. And the reason we want to do that is in this form here, it's actually kind of hard for the alcohol to, you know, really penetrate into that berry in any sort of speed and get the delicious flavors and colors out into the spirit. So we just want to break it up a little. Now the problem with this many berries is that I don't want to, you know, straight up put them in a blender or something and turn them into absolute mush. I want to mash them just gently, just to sort of break the exterior structure of the berry up. Doing it in here is just going to turn into a giant mess. So I'm actually going to do this in little batches. Just enough, like I said, to break kind of to almost like pop the skin a little, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's good. And into a jar. So the next step is pretty simple. We just add the booze. Now, like I said, this is 93%. I made it myself. You do not have to use homemade beverages, obviously, and in some parts of the world, it's illegal. So don't do that. But for those of you that are interested, this is the TPW. If you would like to learn how to make the TPW, you can click on the card up here. No, I'm not telling you what that acronym means because if you don't know what you're talking about, it can sound kind of gross, but I assure you it's not. Anyway, so literally all I want to do is make sure that everything's covered so that when I give it a good shake, know that there's always going to be alcohol in contact with all of the berries. Now I do need to change this out actually. Hold up. There we go. So literally all we're going to do is leave this to sit and wait. Every now and again when I come past it, a couple of times a day, give it a little shake just to make things agitated up. I'm actually going to put just a wee bit more booze in there. Generally, I find that with these macerations that I end up aiming for about 1-to-1 in terms of volume of fruit to liquor, especially if I'm doing the high ABV stuff. So, you know, 1 liter of berries or 1 kilo of berries, which is not the same, but it's close enough to 1 liter of alcohol. So we're gonna let this sit for a while. I will come back and tell you when I think it's almost ready. Cool. So these guys have been doing their thing for 4 days now, and as you can see, the color coming out of them is absolutely bonkers. The aroma is pretty good as well, and I've yet to taste it because remember this is 90 proof, so I haven't just dove straight in. I'm gonna call this, I'm saying this is done right now. You could probably leave it a little bit longer than this, just because there is still some, you know, color in these berries. Whew, yeah, that's high ABV. To be honest, what I'm probably gonna do, because I'm pushing it a little bit here just to get this video out for you guys, is to, once I've separated the berries, once I've strained the berries out, I'll probably put a little bit more booze back into that and let that go for another 4 or 5 days, you know, just to make use of the delicious berries. But anyway, you guys will have time. You can leave it for another few days instead of doing that. What we need to do right now is to separate these, to sieve them. For the most part, this is pretty chunky, so I'm just gonna do a really down and dirty straining first, and then we'll see what it's like. I'm just literally gonna use a stainless steel bowl and a colander, like not even bother with a sieve. And the reason for that is it's super fast. You know, you don't have to mess around waiting for hours with a coffee filter, which sucks. Do be careful with it though. Obviously it is going to make a mess if you spill it. Bam. All right, so I am not going to press these berries. I'm not gonna squish them. I'm not gonna do anything crazy like that because 1, I don't want to create cloudy particulates floating around in the syrup, and 2, I am going to be, you know, reusing these like I said earlier. That is up to you. If you would prefer to get, you know, an extra 5% out of it, then by all means, you know, put it in a muslin cloth and a cheesecloth and squeeze it and wring it out. That's cool. Like I said, I'm not going to bother. What I am going to do is just let this sit by itself for about 10 minutes and let most of that drain out. What I like to do is to get everything dialed in at this stage in terms of flavor, proof, sweetness, before I go filtering it again. Just so you know, it's the last thing I do is filter it. It's nice and clear. It's into the bottle. You're done. Now, in the past, I've done this with liquid honey, is what I've proofed it down and sweetened it with. This stuff is insanely easy to make. I mentioned at the beginning, I like it, you know, with local wild honey. It's literally just honey plus 1.5 times the honey in water by volume. Warm it up a little bit, stir it until it dissolves, whack it into a bottle like this. I like to have it in a bottle. It's great for cocktails. It's also really good for cooking. You know, you can make like vinaigrettes and stuff with it really easily. So I whack it in a bottle like this, keep it in the fridge. That's where this is going. That's a fresh batch. Traditionally, that's what I've done, but this is a very delicate spirit. And, you know, this time around, I think I'm going to play with doing how much that honey to put in, first of all, and the sweetness I want to dial in, but also whether or not to use just simple syrup as well. And that's what I actually have here. I've just, you know, this is a batch I made up earlier today, which is cooled down. Exactly the same deal to make it as this, just with sugar, not honey. Just be aware there's different, with the same amount of sugar, you'll get a different impression of sweetness based on these two things. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I am going to draw 5 mils of the blueberry spirit into each of these cups, and the exact volume is pretty much irrelevant. I'm just doing it so I know how much is in each, so I can play with the ratios in a, you know, relatively controlled manner between the three. The first one I'm going to hit with another 5 mils, so literally 1-to-1 of the honey liquid, of the liquid honey to spirit, and I'm going to do that because I think that's going to be way over sweet. But I just want to, you know, just to, for lols at the moment, figure out if that's where I want to go. That is 2.5 mils, so 2-to-1, twice as much of the blueberry spirit as honey. And in this one down the end, what I'm going to do is do 1 mil of honey, and 1.5, whoops, that's water, of the sugar syrup. Now, what I'm going to do is proof all of these down to 35%. So they're going to be the same volume in the end. Essentially what's changing, it's the same amount of spirit and the same amount of water. Just give me that one, guys. I know it's not entirely accurate. But the difference of honey and the sugar is what's changing. Cool? All right, so all 35%, a buttload of honey, a decent amount of honey, and then the same amount of the same amount of sugar syrup between these two, but some of it's, get out of there, fly. God damn it, you know what? Friggin' flies. So let's give it a nudge. This one's got the most sugar out of everything. Well, yeah, it just tastes like honey. It just tastes like honey. Nothing much else in there. Way too much honey. Too much sugar in general. Can't taste much of the blueberry. This one. Oh yeah, that's better. So I can smell blueberry where I couldn't before. To be fair, that could actually be the difference between the glasses. But I can't smell anything in that. I can just smell honey. That's starting to taste like a honey blueberry liqueur. So much more like blueberry. Still a little bit too on the almost waxy. This is quite a grungy honey, so it's almost a little bit honeycomb-ish. Oh yeah, okay, here we go. Yes, that's it. I think, if anything, it may be a slightly too high proof at the moment, but in saying that, it's warm here today. It's, you know, it's 30, pushing 30 degrees, which is kind of crazy for us. And this is, you know, and this is slightly warmer than that still from being made up. So I'm guessing it probably presents a little hotter than it really is, a little bit more boozy and kind of crazy than it really is. I've also just shocked the heck out of it, proofing it down and whacking all that stuff in there right away. It might be a little bit overproofed as well, but I think the sugar's good. So I'm just gonna leave it, I'm gonna let it settle, you know, in 2 or 3 days I can adjust it a little bit if I want. So what I am gonna do is I'm gonna scale these ratios up to, you know, to match the rest of this jar. I'm just gonna assume that what I've taken out doesn't count because it's negligible. But those exact ratios of what I'm using is, damn flies, get out, is almost irrelevant for you because this is what I like. And the reason that I showed you this process and didn't just give you these numbers is because I want everyone to be able to, you know, mess around and make things the way they want to make them, to experiment with them, to see how, you know, changing the amount of sugar versus the amount of honey to whatever. I want to let people do that themselves and not, you know, just hard and fast force them to do what I'm doing. Does that make sense? You know what? I'm just gonna, you guys didn't see anything, nothing happening. You saw nothing. Cool. Before I get into tasting, guys, I need to give the Patreons a huge, huge thank you. I don't get to do this sort of stuff without the Patreons, so thank you guys. I really, really appreciate it. Final product is super subtle. I have to say that, guys. It's really subtle. The color is awesome. I love the color. I mean, look at that. You can't go wrong with the color. Now, the aroma is a hint of honey, and then the impression of blueberries. That's about it. There's not a whole lot there. But blueberries are kind of a really subtle flavor in and of themselves in a weird way for me. This is sweeter up front than I normally go with liqueurs, but in this instance, I'm happy to do so because that sweetness brings out the flavor of the blueberry. I think blueberries are, I know they're not a crazy sweet fruit, but I have the impression of them being sweet, so I like, you know, like lemon to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be really, really sweet. I like it to have a bit of a kick and some tartness to it and finish sharp just a little bit. But blueberry, I don't want that. So it is sweeter than normal for me. Even after 15, 20 minutes, there's been sort of behind the scenes going on here that this has sat in that time. The shock of proofing it down is starting to clean itself up already. It's much more of an integrated spirit already. So in a couple of days, I think it's going to be great. And the blueberry flavor almost comes back after you swallow. So you swallow, it just tastes like a pleasant, sweet, generic berry with a touch of that wild honey. and then the blueberry sort of flavor almost comes back up. And honestly, guys, I've got some more fresh blueberries here. Blueberries almost like that, you know, even nice fresh blueberries are kind of like that to me as well. You eat them and they're pleasant to eat, but there's not a whole lot of flavor there, to be honest. They just kind of taste fresh. They taste a little sweet. They taste quite mellow. And then it's almost after you swallow, you get this sort of, it's almost not a flavor. It's like it's more of an aroma, like retro nasal impression, you know, as you breathe out after a while. And that's the same impression they get on the spirit, guys. So it is quite delicate. It is quite dainty. It is sweeter than normal. It is something that I would actually sit and sip, you know, like I would drink a port, but it's also going to be great in cocktails. Honestly, probably mostly to add color. I mean, imagine a little bit of this in a gin and tonic, for example. That would be dope. That'd be really good. Or a gin and soda, you know, like a nice fruity, floral, aromatic and light gin with some soda water, touch of tonic, and then some of this in there to bring up the color and just add a little bit more sweetness to it as well. So all in all, guys, I'm thoroughly happy with this. I always am when I make blueberry spirit. We've got NoHo down the road, so we try to do this at least once a year. That's been, you know, 3 years in a row now making spirits. So yeah, it's something I would totally suggest you give it a go. Hell of a lot of fun, and I'll be carrying on the tradition for sure. So anyway, guys, I hope you had a blast watching this. If you did, make sure you hit the like button down below, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will catch you next time. Keep on chasing the craft. See ya.